Money doesn't grow on trees. You've heard that since you were 6 years old, probably from someone holding a $20 bill they weren't planning to give you. Sage advice, timeless wisdom, completely ignored by every major government and financial institution for the last 300 years. Because here's the thing about that saying. It's meant to teach restraint. The problem is the people printing the money never learned it. And when the printers get ambitious, when they decide to play arborist with the currency supply, the forest burns. Every single time. Welcome to this channel, where we analyze the wreckage so you don't have to. Today, 10 catastrophic failures of monetary policy. 10 moments when someone looked at a printing press and thought, how bad could it be? Spoiler, very bad. Picture this. 1775. You're the Continental Congress. You need to fund a war against the most powerful empire on Earth. You have no gold, no silver, no tax base, no credibility, so you print money. 241 million Continentals backed by absolutely nothing except a promise that after the war, if there was an after, maybe they'd be worth something. The paper was decent quality, at least initially. The engraving was passable. The economic theory behind it, non-existent. By 1779, continental currency was trading at 1/40th of its face value. That's a 97.5% loss. The phrase, not worth a continental, entered the American lexicon as a synonym for worthless. Even the British figured out they could counterfeit continentals as economic warfare. Why fight with muskets when you can just destroy the enemy's currency? By 1780, it took 500 continentals to buy what $1 had purchased in 1775. Soldiers were paid in paper that grocers refused. Farmers demanded payment in silver or land deeds. The Continental Congress kept printing because what else were they going to do? Stop? The Revolutionary War was won with French loans and sheer stubbornness. The Continental Dollar died quietly in 1781, unmourned and deeply educational. The founders learned a lesson. Never again. Except they didn't really, because here we are. 1789. Paris. The French Revolution is in full swing. The monarchy is collapsing, the treasury is empty, the people are furious. Someone has a brilliant idea. Take all the church property, nationalize it, print currency backed by the theoretical value of thousands of acres of ecclesiastical real estate, call it the assignat, problem solved. In theory, each assignat represented a claim on confiscated church land. In practice, the National Assembly printed 45 billion assignats over 7 years, far exceeding the value of every cathedral, monastery, and vineyard they'd seized. By 1795, assignats had lost 99% of their value. Bread riots became the national sport. The revolutionary government, desperate, passed a law declaring that anyone refusing assignats as payment could face execution. The presses ran day and night. The denominations climbed higher. 10,000 assignat notes, 100,000. The printing plates wore out, new ones were commissioned. The assignat became wallpaper, literally. People used it to paper walls because it was cheaper than actual wallpaper. In 1796, the government gave up. They gathered the printing plates and the remaining notes and burned them in a public ceremony in the Place Vendôme, a funeral pyre for fake money. The crowd cheered. France learned its lesson for about 20 years. Part 3. Weimar Germany, the wheelbarrow economy. Following analysis is available based on public archives and financial records from the Weimar Republic, 1921 to 1923. You know this one. Everyone knows this one. It's the poster child for hyperinflation, the cautionary tale so famous it's almost boring. But let's appreciate the craftsmanship of the disaster. Germany 1921, weighed down by war reparations, political instability, and a government that discovered the printing press was easier than fiscal responsibility. The Reichsbank started printing marks, a lot of marks. By November 1923, $1 equaled 4.2 trillion marks. That's not a typo, trillion with a T. The denominations got ridiculous. 50 million mark notes, 100 billion mark notes. At the peak, the Reichsbank was printing marks faster than they could distribute them. Workers were paid twice a day because if you waited until evening, your morning wages were worthless.
People used wheelbarrows to carry cash to buy bread, not because they were rich, because the bills were literally heavier than the bread. The middle class was obliterated, life savings evaporated, pensions became jokes. And when the hyperinflation finally ended, courtesy of the Rentenmark and some actual fiscal discipline, the damage was done. The social fabric was shredded, trust in institutions gone. Weimar's hyperinflation didn't directly cause what came next, but it created the conditions. Economic trauma makes people desperate. Desperate people listen to anyone promising stability, even if the price is democracy. The mark didn't just collapse. It took an entire generation's faith in government with it.
Part 4, Hungary, 1946, when Weimar said, "Hold my beer." You thought Weimar was bad? Hungary looked at Weimar's hyperinflation and said, "That's adorable." July 1946, Hungary holds the world record for hyperinflation, not just by a little, by orders of magnitude that make economists weep. Prices doubled every 15.6 hours, not days, hours. The pengo, Hungary's currency, collapsed so fast they had to invent new numbers. The highest denomination note ever issued, 100 quintillion pengo. That's a 1 with 20 zeros. The bill was literally too large to be useful. By the time you walked from the bank to the store, it had lost half its value. The Hungarian National Bank tried to keep up. They printed currency around the clock. 3 print shops ran simultaneously. They couldn't print fast enough to match inflation. Think about that. The printing presses, physical machines, were the bottleneck, not human decision-making. At the peak, Hungary's inflation rate was 41.9 quadrillion% per month. I had to check the archive twice for that number. It's real. The pengo was replaced by the forint in August 1946. Exchange rate, 400 octillion pengo to 1 forint. Hungary's hyperinflation lasted 1 year and destroyed an entire economy. The recovery took decades. The lesson was clear, except nobody was listening. Fast forward to the 21st century. Surely we've learned. Surely modern economics, computers, global banking systems would prevent. Zimbabwe 2008. Robert Mugabe's government needed money to fund, well, everything. Land reform had collapsed agricultural production, the economy was in free fall, tax revenue had dried up, so they printed. Zimbabwe's inflation rate peaked at 79.6 billion% month over month in November 2008. The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe issued a $100 trillion note. 100 trillion. It could buy 3 eggs, maybe. Store prices changed multiple times per day. People spent currency the instant they received it because waiting an hour meant losing purchasing power. The economy dollarized, meaning everyone just started using US dollars and South African rand because those were actually worth something. The Zimbabwean dollar was officially abandoned in 2009. The $100 trillion notes sell on eBay now for about 10 US dollars. The souvenir value exceeds the actual value by approximately infinity. Zimbabwe tried to reintroduce its own currency in 2019. How's that going? Not well. The pattern holds. Venezuela, 21st century, massive oil reserves, should be rich. Instead, they decided to test whether you can print your way to prosperity. The answer? No, you cannot. The bolivar started collapsing in 2016. By 2018, Venezuela's inflation rate hit 1 million% annually. That's not a metaphor. 1 million%. The government kept issuing new notes with more zeros, 1,000 bolivars, 10,000, 100,000, 1 million. Then they gave up and just deleted zeros 3 times. Each time they knocked several zeros off the currency. New bolivar, bolivar soberano, bolivar digital. Different names, same problem. Venezuelans fled the country by the millions, not just for political reasons, for survival. The currency was worthless. Savings accounts became a punchline. Salaries couldn't buy food. The Venezuelan government blamed sanctions, capitalism, imperialism, sabotage, everything except the printing press they controlled. Venezuela had every advantage: oil wealth, educated population, infrastructure, and they printed it all away in less than a decade. That's efficiency.
Argentina deserves special recognition. They didn't just experience one currency collapse, they've experienced multiple. They're the recurring character in the hyperinflation saga. 1975 to 1991, multiple currency crises. The peso ley, the peso argentino, the austral, each one introduced to fix the previous disaster, each one printed into oblivion. The 1980s were particularly impressive. Inflation hit 3,000% annually in 1989. Store prices changed daily, people rushed to spend their paychecks immediately, the economy ran on barter and US dollars. Argentina has defaulted on its sovereign debt 9 times since independence. 9. That's not a country with bad luck, that's a pattern. And each time the solution involved printing more currency to pay debts denominated in other currencies. The peso has lost so much value that Argentina has redenominated its currency multiple times, slicing zeros off bills like they're trimming a hedge, but the roots remain poisoned. As of 2025, Argentina is still struggling with inflation. Different president, same printing press. The pattern continues. Let's go back, way back. Rome, the empire, the civilization that gave us law, engineering, and the concept that you can debase your currency so gradually that nobody notices until civilization collapses. The denarius started as 95% pure silver under Augustus. Beautiful coin, real value. By the 3rd century AD, it was less than 5% silver. The rest was copper and bronze with a thin silver wash. The Romans didn't have printing presses, but they had something better, mints that could debase coins slowly, imperceptibly over generations. Each emperor needed money for wars, construction, bribes. Each emperor reduced the silver content just a little. The result? Inflation, economic instability, currency that citizens didn't trust. By the time of Diocletian, the empire had to implement price controls because the currency was so debased that prices were spiraling out of control. Those price controls failed because you can't legislate away economic reality. Rome collapsed for many reasons. Currency debasement was just one, but it was a significant one. The pattern was set 2,000 years ago. We're still following it.
Part 9. The John Law Mississippi Bubble, when France didn't learn. John Law, Scottish economist, gambler, murderer, technically, he killed a man in a duel over a woman, fled to France, convinced the French regent that he could solve France's debt crisis. His plan? Create a central bank, issue paper money, tie the currency to shares in the Mississippi Company, which had a monopoly on trade with French Louisiana. 1716 to 1720, the Mississippi Scheme. It worked brilliantly for about 3 years. Stock prices soared, paper money flooded the economy, everyone was rich, on paper. Then people realized Louisiana wasn't generating wealth. The Mississippi Company's profits were imaginary. The whole thing was a speculative bubble backed by nothing. The crash was spectacular. Law's banknotes became worthless overnight. Riots in Paris. Law fled France in disguise. The word millionaire was coined during this bubble and immediately associated with catastrophic wealth destruction. France learned its lesson about paper money until the Assignats, then they learned it again until the next time. The pattern? Create money, create bubble, crash, repeat. 10 failures. Different centuries, different continents, different governments, same mistake. Print money, create temporary prosperity, ignore the inflation, print more, ignore the warnings, print even more, collapse. Why do we keep doing this? Because printing money is easy. Fiscal discipline is hard. Cutting spending is politically unpopular. Raising taxes is political suicide. But printing, that's just the central bank doing monetary policy. That's just quantitative easing. That's just stimulus. The names change, the marketing gets more sophisticated, the economics papers get longer, but the mechanism is identical. Create currency without creating value, then act surprised when people realize the currency is worthless. Every government thinks they're different. We have modern economic models. We have independent central banks. We have credible institutions. And yet, the pattern holds. Rome debased coins.
Revolutionary France printed assignats, Weimar printed marks, Zimbabwe printed dollars, Venezuela printed bolivares. The technology changes, the outcome doesn't. The tree never works. Money doesn't grow. It's backed by productivity, by trust, by something real. When you try to print prosperity, you get inflation. When you try to print your way out of debt, you get hyperinflation. When you try to print your way out of hyperinflation, you get Venezuela. So what's the lesson? That we've learned nothing? That we're doomed to repeat this forever? Pretty much. As of 2025, global debt exceeds $300 trillion. Central banks worldwide expanded their balance sheets by trillions during the pandemic. Emergency measures, they said. Temporary stimulus, they said. The printing presses are still running, the denominations keep getting bigger, the debt keeps growing. And somewhere in some finance ministry, someone is looking at a printing press and thinking, how bad could it be? We know how bad. We have 10 examples. We have 2,000 years of evidence. The pattern is clear. But patterns are for people who learn from history. And history? History is just a book nobody reads until it's too late. At this channel, we study the wreckage so you can see it coming. Not that it helps. The tree of lies keeps growing, fed by the same poisoned soil, bearing the same worthless fruit. The ink is still wet on the next catastrophe. We're just waiting to see which country writes it. History doesn't repeat, but the stupidity is remarkably consistent.